Okay.
Here we are. Woohoo! Woohoo! Here we are. Yeah, let's get everything sort of
zoomed in on us a little bit.
You did. That's okay. Okay. I don't remember how we know if anyone's even looking. But I guess
live stream is still new to us.
Yeah, exactly. So
I think we'll see in just a minute.
Yeah.
So we'll give it a second.
Okay, sounds good. Well, that's true. We just expect this instantaneous connection.
Yeah. There's a lot of technology behind the scenes working right now.
Yeah, exactly. All right, good. Let's see. I feel like I'm out of the picture.
Scoot in a little bit.
Okay, that's good. That's nice. All righty. Great,
Hi,
Jolynn. Yeah. Well, I like to celebrate birthdays for a whole week, if not the whole month. So I appreciate that very much. Thanks for mentioning it. And Kathy and Maggie, great. So, yeah, great. Okay, let us know you're here. It really helps us to see the people filtering in. It keeps us from looking at ourselves on the screen. We were just talking about how no matter how many times you do this, you can still feel really self-conscious, which I suppose you're not supposed to talk about that at all. Or the fact that you're down in the closet trying on this and trying on that. I had on a sweater because it's so cold here. I know if you're in Anchorage, like my friend Malin, you're not going to be very sympathetic, or upstate New York, but for us it's very cold.
20s.
Yeah.
For us in Texas is pretty
So
cold.
I was trying on sweaters, but I had on a turtleneck that made it look like I didn't have a neck.
Yeah.
And like I didn't have anything but just a floating head on a green blob of sweater. So that wasn't working out too well. Anyhow, great. Yeah, great. We've got our sisters here from the UK. That's fabulous. And Nashville. And we'll give it another minute and then we'll launch. If you have any questions today, please put them in the comments section and we'll keep an eye on that and we'll answer them to the best of our ability, either as we go along. But Zena's going to kind of, well, whoever isn't talking can watch that part.
We will monitor it.
Yeah, but we'll monitor that.
Yeah.
Good. Okay, great. Okay, so, yeah, oh, Janice, so glad to see you. This is an amazing botanical printer who's done some fabulous things, so I just love seeing. And Darcy, thanks for coming again. Yeah, Joliet, Illinois, 9. Like, get over it, Jane, right?
Yeah.
I know. Lynn Nelson Johnson wrote to me today. She's going to be warm, 3 degrees, Jane. So we just have to get a grip. Okay, well, we're glad you're here, and I am Jane Dunewald, and this is
Zena Duke.
And we're talking about the cornerstones of creativity this month. And we are today talking about clarity. But I thought I'd go over the core beliefs that we share in case you weren't here last time and you need a refresher. And frankly, there's nothing wrong with a refresher because I go over the core beliefs every time we start in on something new to make sure that's still where we are, and as a reminder, I think. So here are our core beliefs. Creativity is not only available to creatives, it's a human and innate ability, and I've started to think of that so broadly that now I characterize it as creative intelligence. And it is an essential tool that makes navigating the world more rewarding, and here's the thing, fun. And community is an important part of that creative living, because Zen and I could sit here, open a bottle of wine, and talk about this for an hour every afternoon, but it wouldn't be the same if we couldn't share it with other people, even though this is a limited platform and we get all that and we're not all in the same room together. We're still sharing and it's still community, and that's important, I think. And here's the other thing that's important that we really believe is that you are worth it, and that you deserve to be here, and that you deserve to exercise your creativity and explore it and expand it in whatever way feels right to you, which leads us into clarity, because that's the topic of the day. So, how should we launch? What would you like to do first?
So last week we talked about curiosity, and I think we should just talk about how we think clarity builds off of that, off of curiosity. And we discussed how making a list of various things, if you don't really know where to start, can pique your curiosity, and you can sit down and, just spend some time studying something or making something. And then you can decide if you enjoyed that or not.
Mm-hmm.
And that is what kind of can help lead into clarity, the second cornerstone.
Because they're cornerstones, but they build on each other in a sense
Yeah.
as well, which is why we're laying them out in the way that we are. And so, there are so many, this is so rich, there are so many directions we can go. Can I start by saying that we have as many ideas as we can, each of us is open to as many ideas as we can basically process in a day or a week or a month or a lifetime. And that to some degree, we wouldn't be playing fair, we wouldn't be realistic if we didn't talk about the fact that a certain amount of clarity has to be driven by, or maybe it even benefits from the limitations.
I certainly benefit from limitations.
Yeah. So what I mean by that is that we have, which I've referred to a lot in the past, we've got the non-negotiable time, which is the stuff we have to do.
Mm-hmm.
And we've got the negotiable time, which is the stuff, the things that we can do, that we want to do,
Mm-hmm.
which is where real clarity can come in.
Yeah.
But we're all still, to some extent, bound by, I'm going to make sure the sound's all the way up. We're still to some extent bound by parameters that are outside who we are.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought of this because we were in the car yesterday doing a little Valentine shopping, and Zara was out of school. She's almost 4, so she's with us. She's a regular player in the stage play of our lives. And she was a little bored in the car, so we started going over the days of the week. And she had Friday down, and she had Saturday down, and she had Sunday down because she comes to my house to play.
Mm-hmm.
But I said, well, now what about Monday? And she said, no, I don't like Monday. I said, well, you don't really have a choice. You have to have Monday. No, I don't. I'm not having Monday. And this is an example of wanting something to be true that you are not going to change. We are all going to have Monday. And so that is just something to tuck away as we look at clarity in the overall sense, because we need, wrong choice of words, no need, no should. We benefit from being clear even there about what is possible and available to us and what isn't.
Mm-hmm.
I can say that I want to get on a plane and go to Belgium right now, but it's not going to get me anywhere because I can't go to Belgium right now. Nobody can, for really good reasons. So I just wanted to kick it off with that for starters.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
So let's talk about, can I keep going?
Sure.
Okay. So another thing I thought about in terms of clarity, because what is it really? It's about your preferences and how you sort out your resources. So your resources are your time, and your resources are sometimes financial, and your resources are all the stuff you have in your studio if you're a creative person. And it can be overwhelming because we have this embarrassment of riches. So how do we get clear about what we want to use and what we don't want to use? Like, what if you go into the studio and you have a whole day and you can do anything you want to do, but you can't find anything?
Yeah.
Are you well organized?
Usually. I think my problem is deciding what to do in the first place. And my life is kind of chaotic right now. So when I find myself with an hour where I could, or more, where I could sit down and make something, I completely get blindsided by the panic of picking the perfect thing, which is my perfectionism and one of my worst traits.
Well, you're clear about that.
And then sometimes I do. Then I I figure out what it is I want to do, and then I can't find what I need to do it.
That's frustrating.
And so that's a problem too.
Mm-hmm. Well, so one of the first things that we could do toward clarity, if that became the goal, would be to literally clear some things out.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Because I know people who save everything
mm-hmm.
because they think sooner or later it'll have a purpose and they can use it, and they just don't want to get rid of it. Because frankly, that's the damn thing. How many of us have gotten rid of something and the next week we wish we had it again? So it just sets up a situation where we don't want to cast anything off because we have had that maybe only one time where we really needed whatever it was, and damn it, we gave it away.
Yeah, it reinforces keeping
hoarding. It does. It reinforces hoarding.
Yeah,
that's not a good thing. So that's one thing to. So then you have to. I think you've got to negotiate with yourself.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, okay, if I kept, because I was drinking a little supplement for a while that came in cute little glass bottles, and by the end of the month, I had 31 cute little glass bottles, and you could see where this would go. Well, they were all stacking up, and I had nothing in mind for them. So I thought, first I kicked the supplement because whatever, that's a different story. But then I put the glass bottles in a shoebox, and I put the shoebox on the desk in the studio where I would still see it. And I thought, if I haven't figured out what to do with those by the end of the month, then I'm just going to recycle them. And if I really need little bottles like that again, then I'll figure that out when it happens. So I think that we have to, I see you've got a lot of perfectionist company there. Yeah, so I think one of the things you can think you're going to use, and I have a dear student in Florida who admitted one time that she had assembled bags of blue jeans because she was planning to make all these blue jean pieces. And I said, well, yeah, that sounds great. Well, except that it was 15 years ago.
Oh, no.
And so the garage has a wall of blue jeans in bags that aren't going anywhere. And we just can't live like that. A lot of people don't have that kind of space anyhow. And so that's a limitation that's positive.
Mm-hmm.
And so Linda Geiger's saying, if it doesn't bring you joy, get rid of it. And I think that's a really great way. Barb Sorge says, I'm trying to organize it, and I never give anything away. I just used all my bubble wrap. Oh, Barb, you're not helping me here. Around the pipes. Gee whiz.
That's smart. Yeah.
Yeah, so there you go. There you go. Anyhow, what is it then? It's a balancing act.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not sure there's anything, this isn't really supporting our basic premise today, but it's true. Life is changeable, and you can feel as though you're really clear about something, and then it shifts, and you got to be open to it. But if you choose to try to be clear as often as you can, maybe that's the best you can do.
So this week, I went back and read the chapter in Creative Strength Training in the book about limitations and figuring out what you're good at and what you like to do, and that whole kind of thought process in taking an inventory of your life. And that's been very useful for me. And I think I actually took it a step back from actually making art, and went years ago in therapy, a therapist had a list of values, and I went through this process of, it was like 100 values I wrote some of them down, like authenticity, achievement, adventure, boldness, success, wealth, wisdom, community, competency. And so there are like hundreds of these. And you go through and kind of whittle down, pick 20, and eventually you have to get down to 5 core values, because if everything's a core value, then nothing is really a priority.
Right.
And so my struggle with clarity recently is not really in art making, because I just haven't had the time to devote to that recently. But I feel very unclear in so many other aspects of my life. But doing that practice really helped. And I think it can be useful if you're trying to find clarity in your art making process or artwork too, in what matters to you and why are you doing what you're doing in every aspect of life. So that was really good for me. And so my next kind of step after that was listing things that I felt like I was good at, both kind of not non art making and creative, more making tasks. And that was great too. When was the last time you took an inventory of like that in your life, or maybe just in related to artwork?
Well, that's an interesting question.
Sorry to put you on the spot like that.
No, it's okay.
I'm just really interested, actually.
Because the truth is that and I know I dive back into my history, and I hope you don't mind. I hope other people, I mean, that's what we have that's real, isn't it?
That's part of the community, I think. Hearing other people's stories always is helpful for me.
Yeah, I think that's true too. And I did literally decide when I was first bankrupt and you were 3 and divorced, and it was very painful. I never want to be dismissive about that, but I literally thought to myself, because I did keep a journal then at that particular time. I kept a journal, and I still have them. I dug them out when we moved, and I actually got very clear about the fact that because I loved to create in all kinds of ways, and I had been raised in an environment where I was blessed to be able to explore all kinds of stuff, sewing and cooking. My mother was a home economics major and a homemaker and home with us. And we lived in the country, and we could roam anywhere we wanted, and we could pick up limbs and get the hammer out of the shed and build things. I mean, we had an amazing opportunity to go any direction we wanted. And so in a way, I had always I had never characterized myself because I wasn't clear, but I could see that I was kind of Jane of all trades and mistress of nothing, because I knew how to do a whole bunch of stuff a little bit, but I wasn't that good at anything. And if I needed to make a living, which I did, and I wasn't going to go back to what I had known in the past, I better choose something and focus on it, which is what I did. And so at that point, I guess I inventoried, without really having any of this language, what I liked to do and what I knew how to do, which was the beginning of thinking about alignment. And surface design was a relatively new concept, so it wasn't as though the field was already filled up with people. So it just turns out that that's where I landed, and that's what I did. But that's why I did it, because I had clarity around what was in that, at least at that point, the reality of the life situation that I was in. And it worked. Fortunately for me, with the big gambler archetype that I have, it worked. So, but I've often thought about that over the years without doing anything quite as specific. I've done what you're talking about when it comes to what my values are as an instructor and a public person out there in the creative world. And we've done it related to what we think creative strength training should be and what our values are there. But from a personal perspective, maybe I'm old enough, I haven't really thought specifically about that for a long time, because I know what I still love to do, and what I love to do is surface design stuff, and what I'm committed and love to do in the rest of my public creative existence is to be there for other people and encourage them, because I feel as though I've achieved so much that I wanted to achieve. I don't feel like it has to be about me anymore. I mean, there are museums and shows that I would have loved to be included in, and maybe after I die, that'll happen. Great, let me know. But in the meantime, the longer I've gone on, the clearer I am that it's not about me that much anymore, and it's more about what I have to offer. And I just think we're at the cusp of a time when that becomes an even more important thing, because there are so many people who still need to achieve that sense of success and fulfillment. Mm-hmm. Sorry, I'm kind of on a soapbox. I can step off now. So, good question. Let's see if we have some. Oh, Angie's, this is a good story. She'd never owned a home until last year. She dragged everything with her for years. Now she's sorting through what she owns as she renovates and organizes, and donating to others and giving things away and making space for what she wants. And that's really what we're talking about here, isn't it?
And I love what Linda said too, that the true clarity challenge is to live in the moment. Mm-hmm. And the future is not clear. Mm-hmm. And the past is fuzzy as well.
Yeah, and we can't drag all that crap around with us endlessly. Mm-hmm. We just, even if we were nomads, we'd have to choose what to put on the sled.
Yeah.
You know? So, but you know, the other thing I realized about it, clarity, this week, because of a post I had from a participant in one of my lectures, and I'm not free to share what she wrote to me because it was written to me in confidence, but it made me think of some other circumstances that showed me how clearly clarity is tied to courage. Mm-hmm. Because when we get clear, this isn't so much about the stuff we give away, although I think it takes courage to live in present time.
I do too.
This is more about the courage that it takes. Okay, can I go chakras?
Yep, we're going chakras.
Okay, great. So if you're not familiar with chakras, we're going to put up the creativity and the chakra chart on my website. Will it be easy to find?
Yes.
Okay, good.
I'll put it in the Creative Strength Collective group on Facebook if you're on Facebook.
Oh, that's a good idea.
And I will put it under the resources page on your website.
That'd be great. So without spending too much time on it, chakras are energetic centers, and this is more an Eastern way of thinking about the human body than it is Western, although we know all this stuff is crashing together at this point in time. And so the chakras each have, and they rise up through the body, the chakras each have a creative lesson that they can teach us. And we'll just talk about the first two right now. Actually, I was thinking about doing a free lecture on these.
Yeah, we're going to talk a little bit about it tomorrow.
Yeah, we might talk about it tomorrow a little bit. In any event, the first chakra is traditionally called the root chakra, but another way to think about that is the tribe, and that's the tribe you were born into and the people who influenced you when you were growing up, and then it can be church groups or guilds or whoever you got involved with as you were maturing in your life. The tribe usually has a certain opinion about how things should be done, which is mainly to protect the integrity of the group experience. So there are really good reasons to be socialized by a tribe, because that helps us get along and avoid mayhem. But the flip side of that is that we often have really great ideas of our own that aren't approved of by the tribe, and but we feel this yearning, and creatively, I'm definitely on a track of talking about this creatively right now. Creatively, we want to step away from traditional tribal ideas about how a quilt should be put together, how many stitches to the inch, whether you can use a particular glaze. Barb Sorge knows more about this than I do, on a form without it falling all apart or blowing up in the kiln. I mean, there are all kinds of beliefs that the classic story is the woman who said, well, why are you cutting the end off the ham? Well, that's how my grandma always did it. And then it turns out the grandma's stove was the oven was too small. It had nothing to do with anything else. It was totally practical. Have you never heard that?
No, that's funny.
Oh, yeah. Anyhow, that's hilarious. I don't know how you missed all these apocryphal stories from your childhood. Anyway, so there are reasons that we used to do things a particular way that we don't need to do anymore because we have new understanding and clarity about them. And that means that we each have an opportunity to move away from the tribe and into our own claiming of ourselves and our ideas, and et cetera. And so that's where I saw clarity landing, is in the second chakra, because when we have these interests that we have and ways that we think about doing things that no one else has necessarily tried as far as we know, whether it's a recipe, whatever the hell it is, then we're getting clarity about what we care about and the risks we're willing to take and the friends we want to have and all of everything that's encompassed by that. And so then courage comes in, because it takes courage to step away from the group and go solo until we find support. And that doesn't mean there isn't support within the tribe or that they don't think they want the best for us, but there's a difference between thinking you want the best for someone and what the best for someone actually is. When you were younger, I had a very clear idea of what the best thing for you was, but that wasn't the track you were on at all. And yet, if you would have hated my guts by now if you had stayed in the limited world that I wanted to create in order to protect you. Because you would have never had a chance to spread your own wings and gain your own self-confidence.
Yeah.
So when we move away from the tribe, we're not dismissing them. You can still think my mother loves me, but that doesn't mean I have to do what my mother wants me to do, because that's not the path I'm on, right? It's a really hard thing for parents. It's hard for all of us, because sometimes we have friends and we have guilds, we have people who really think we should just get over it, which is a horrible thing to say to somebody. And we have to have the courage to rebuke that. And we don't have to turn it into a screaming argument. We can rebuke it gently and just go and do what we're going to do. Like, I told you not to drive on the freeway, but you did it anyway. You just didn't tell me, which was perfect at the time.
Yeah.
So this is how we move away from the tribe, and it takes courage.
It's also how basically all innovation happens.
Yeah.
All of the modern day things, that we love and appreciate in artwork, new genres, new styles, comes from taking that step away from what the current thing is.
Yeah. It's called evolution.
Right.
So I think that's important, but I think it's really important to underscore this idea of courage. So back to, that was a long meander getting to the point, which was, so I had this letter from this student, but then it reminded me of being in a situation, because I ran the mastery program. Well, I have a group, and this will be the last group because of COVID, I think, and people can't come to me anymore. But I had this group, and I enrolled 12 people, and they're going to come back over and over again. And I had a situation where one student spent the whole first week, mainly talking about herself in the group discussions and drawing everything back to her and her problems and all of that. And I could see the impact it was having on the group. And I didn't do anything about it. So 6 months later, here comes the group again, and the same thing is happening. And I could clearly see then that if I didn't have the courage to deal with the situation, that group was never going to coalesce in the healthiest possible way that they could to support and help each other and really enjoy the time that we were together. So at the end of the second week, when we had the one-on-one conferences, and it was her turn, I said to her, we need to do something differently, because when we're in a group environment, you spend a lot of time talking about yourself and getting other people to rally around you, and other people are getting shortchanged. And I was really thinking, I'd been awake all night thinking about how to say this in a gentle way, but it didn't make any difference because as soon as we finished talking, she went back out into the studio while I was meeting with other people and proceeded to go to one person after another to drill them and question them about what did they say. And so it got really, it backfired horribly on me. And I was scared. And fortunately, the week after they all went home, she wrote to me and made an excuse, which I recognized it for what it was, and bowed out and didn't come back anymore. And then I had to acknowledge to the group that she was no longer going to be part of the group and that she had decided, because of some things that had happened, that she wouldn't be returning. But I could feel a palpable relief when we talked about it. And that's when I realized the heavy weight of leadership in a way, because if you're really trying to do the ethical thing and go for a win-win, which is what I always want to go for, sometimes the only win-win you can achieve is to stand up to something that's challenging the well-being of the entire group. Mm-hmm. From that standpoint of what clarity, and then you have to find the most creative, honest ways you can to affect a change that protects the group because they've given you their trust. So it's a very powerful, it's one of the most powerful things about leadership and teaching. And I don't know whether other teachers think about this and put a lot of energy into it, but I do. And I think it brings a whole new level of interactivity and trust that is, well, for me, it's incredibly rewarding. And the feedback I get from the people who've been through that program is that they also found it rewarding, because what are we really after? And we're going to talk about it next week, is community. Mm-hmm. And community can't come if you don't have a foundation of clarity and trust that you're building on. Mm-hmm. But that doesn't mean courage is easy, and it doesn't mean clarity is easy either. We talk about a lot of these things, and yeah, we should laugh, and it should be light. But on the other hand, these are serious aspects of how we build, how we actualize ourselves. Mm-hmm. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So that example for you as a teacher and leader makes sense, but it transfers into kind of any career or role you're playing. Yeah. I was just thinking as a mother, which I'm sure you've thought about that too, but being very clear about what I'm trying to communicate and teach and how I lead. It's mm-hmm. all important.
It is. Let's see. So, Linda, I wanted to go back to that. And thanks again for the birthday wishes. Clarity has caused me to outgrow one of my tribes, and that's been a tough transition. Yeah. And it's important to acknowledge that. And then Jeanette says, clarity that I experienced earlier in life clouded when I retired. It's required a readjustment or reevaluation of new conditions. I agree that different circumstances require new responses. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the recalculating part.
Yeah.
Just always kind of doing
that. And Irene points out that one shorthand version is to think of it as individualism versus communalism.
Back to the chakras and the tribe.
Yeah, but I think there's room for both. Yeah. I think in many ways that when we're too individualistic and we lose sight of the community and we just go it alone, that can be really lonely too. Mm-hmm. And so somehow we want to, wouldn't this be the best case scenario if we could become the individuals that we're comfortable being, and then also find a community, whether it's the past tribe or not, a community where who we are now is honored and appreciated and supported without apology or without criticism. or without judgment. That would be, I would like that.
Yeah.
I would like that.
Yeah.
I'd like that a lot. Let's see. Janice says, perhaps we should approach our creativity as being a new Renaissance period of rebirth, learning, wisdom, and courage. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's a really great way to think about it. Because all of those are related to being clear. Isn't rebirth when you see the new potential and being as clear as you can be about what that new potential is gosh, it literally would be the ground for all of what comes next. Barb says, I haven't completely retired because I value the part of my community, but I have cut back. And I think we all have a right to do that as well. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. In thinking about kind of recalculating and as we move through phases of life, reevaluating ourselves and finding the kind of new clarity that fits with where we are now in life. I'm definitely in that space right now. But I think we can also get stuck in thinking we are this way. We are, for an example, I'm an introvert. I'm not. I have friends and family, and but I don't really like big social engagements, or I just kind of have this idea of myself in my head about being an introvert and what that means. But going back to courage, kind of on a smaller scale, I've really been trying to challenge myself in my beliefs about myself. Mm-hmm. and one in particular, in being an introvert, and kind of challenging myself to reach out to friends that I've completely fallen away from in the pandemic, or like joining Zoom get-togethers or meetings, because it's not always the most. Mm-hmm. It can be awkward, mm-hmm. Doing something like that. But I've learned so much about myself and enjoyed those experiences, and pushed myself in various ways, in art making too, in playing with paints and charcoal and doing different things, Mm-hmm. So I have found more clarity about myself in not just stopping in a belief about myself, but challenging it. Mm-hmm. And sometimes it solidifies that belief, like that is not mm-hmm. for me. Mm-hmm. But
well, I guess we can probably settle into those, and it's a default comfort zone.
Absolutely.
Well, I don't have to do that because I'm an introvert.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Or just in my day job, I've had to kind of step into a leadership role there and do some trainings and lead presentations. And that's never been something very comfortable for me, but I found it to be so rewarding. Mm-hmm. And I absolutely hate it until the moment that I have to start doing it. And then I find some sort of new clarity about myself where I'm good at it and I enjoy it and I get good feedback. Mm-hmm. And so it expands who I think how I see myself.
Yeah. Welcome to my world.
What do you mean?
Anybody who has known me for any amount of time knows that especially when I used to, God, I hope it comes back, live things, I'd always cry for a minute before I actually went up there because I was terrified. I was terrified every single time. And I think that's part of, this is an interesting aspect of clarity I never thought of till now. The imposter syndrome.
Oh my God. Yeah.
That's related to this.
Yeah.
The imposter, which is related to what we believe about ourselves. That would be a great exercise. Scrap the values. Mm-hmm. Write down, what do you believe about yourself right now?
Yeah.
And how many of those things aren't true? I believe I'm not even sure where I can go with it, but I know what I used to think. I used to lay low because I thought I wasn't that interesting. I didn't know as much as other people. I wasn't particularly articulate. And you start beating yourself up with a negative list like that, and before you know it, you should just go sit in the closet.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the good thing about the job you've had is that it called you to do something that you were uncomfortable doing, and you had to do it. if you were going to keep the job.
Yeah.
And if we don't have, sometimes if we don't have that kind of, you are going to do this, then it's easy to just turn around and go the other direction or ignore it.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know how we can, I don't know whether discipline is the answer or not when it comes to making ourselves try things. Although maybe it goes back, I talked to Katie Pasquini yesterday for the April creative, the guest creative for April in CST. And it was a fantastic, as always, really fun, fantastic conversation with her. And I said, well, how do you handle getting stuck and not knowing what to do? And she goes, Jane, anybody can do anything for 1 hour. And I thought, damn, I usually say 15 minutes.
Yeah, that's what I just thought in my head.
Yeah. And she's raised the bar to 1 hour.
Yeah.
Well, anybody can try something once. And if anything, it involves getting over the self-consciousness of maybe not being in touch with who we are. I'm struggling right now.
I'm just,
like, where does the imposter come
right.
from anyway? I don't know. Does that have to do with parents who told you you can't do that, you're getting too big for your britches? Or is that the committee saying you could never be any good at that?
I think as I don't know, as women, we walk through a different world than men do sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
And there's so much to get into there.
Yeah.
in how, how we all experience the world and how the world reacts to us.
Yeah.
But I'm just thinking about this interview I read. I can't remember. It's a big corporate company. And a woman just became the first CEO. And every reporter is asked, about imposter syndrome with her and her experience moving into the role. And her response has always been something to the effect of, I've seen plenty of men step into this role and lead companies, and they haven't done anything that I couldn't do or see myself doing. And why are women always asking this question?
How come you're not asking them if they feel like imposters?
Yeah. I can share that article too. It's really interesting.
That'd be great.
She was awesome.
Yeah.
I don't know where it comes from.
Well, we're getting some ideas along the edge here. And
being told who we are rather than discovering ourselves for ourselves.
And not being invited, I don't know.
I think just realizing people are just people. And even, the president of the United States, a CEO, or, they're still just a human making mistakes and learning as they go. And why can't we see ourselves that way too?
Mm-hmm. Well,
yeah. What?
Oh, I'm looking at I realize I need to keep talking, but I'm looking at the comments.
Barb said, the farther along I am in my retirement, the more of an imposter I think I must have been in profession. No way. I don't sharpen that saw any longer.
Yeah.
But I used to feel like an imposter as an art quilter. Not so much anymore. Is it just a trade-off comfort zone issue? Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, I think it's a whole host of things, but I think one of the most important things I ever learned from Caroline Myss, frankly, wasn't necessarily about the archetypes or chakras or sacred contracts or any of that. It was learning, and I'm rereading a book of hers that's, of course, now I can't think, Healing Beyond Reason, that's about, well, that's a different story. Anyway, the point is that we can carry around a lot of baggage, and that's weight, W-E-I-G-H-T.
Mm-hmm.
And as long as we're carrying around a lot of W-E-I-G-H-T, then we have to W-A-I-T, weight, to make the changes that are right in front of us, because we still have to reconcile the heavy load that we're dragging behind us. And so sometimes I think it's really important to accept, like, this is what I would encourage all of us, you, me, everyone who's watching this, to do. We're not always going to know why things happened or where it came from, but the sooner we acknowledge that it has happened or it is true in present time, the sooner we can decide that that is going to no longer be significant. Because it's like, as soon as you recognize the elephant in the room, it begins to shrink in size and lose its importance and its power over us. And so I think that really what we're talking about is one more full circle example of clarity, so that we can see that some of that crap it's not even worth untangling it. It would take too much damn time. Let's move forward here. Let's just keep moving. Let's go in a positive and choose intentionally to go into a direction that's clearer for us, and realize that that kind of shit happens to everybody, and it's in the past, and we're going to leave it in the past as long as it's not doing any damage right now. It would be different if something that happened in the past was doing damage to you right now, because that would require a really good therapist. Or a confrontation on a level that isn't what you and I are doing or talking about right now at all. But I think the rest of us can let all of that go and free up that energy to move forward.
Yeah.
And be clear that that's what we want too. Yeah, Susan, make a sign and put it up on the wall.
I love what LC said. The imposter syndrome for me comes from comparing.
Yeah.
My word for the month is incomparable. A flower in a garden just grows beautifully. It doesn't consider the other flowers. There's no jealousy or comparison. Yeah, comparison is the thief of joy. I think about that quite often, actually.
There you go. Did she write that, or did you remember that?
I remember that.
That's a really
That's
great
one of my favorite quotes.
I know, me too.
Yeah, once we are clear about why we're doing what we're doing, whether it be our career or making artwork, we're like driven by something inside us that it kind of puts blinders on you. I've had that experience before. It's not like I walk through life every day in that, but it's a completely different feeling when you're really grounded in.
Well, and you can feel it in here too, the commitment to it, and the rightness of it, I think. At least I can. Yeah. Susan made a good comment here. You can't fix what you don't acknowledge. And this is why, oh gosh. Well, I can't wait for next week.
I keep jumping ahead in my own mind.
I know, because I want to talk about community, because, and then let's come back to Ina's question.
Yeah.
But I do think, and maybe that's part of it too, an answer for Ina, is that getting clear, you can think and think and think. You can do some writing if you're so inclined. But I think that one of the most satisfying ways, which is risky, to deal with the kinds of things we're talking about, is not necessarily to go on Facebook and blast it out to everybody who will sign on and read what you wrote. That's a boundary issue that doesn't protect you. But I do think having other people that you trust, even if you're not always in complete agreement with them, that you can talk about it with and compare notes, only helps us see that we are not the only ones in the boat. And that other people have experienced the same kinds of things that we've experienced. Just bringing up imposter syndrome proves the point. And that the sooner we, as she said, the sooner we acknowledge it, the sooner we can acknowledge it and move on to whatever or dismiss it and move on to the next thing. And so that's why I think that a community like CST is so valuable. Because that is one of our core values for creative strength training, is to establish and nurture a group of people, mainly women, who do choose to trust and do choose over the amount of time that people participate to make comments and be real with each other. And I think that's one thing that sets it apart. I mean, I know we're not really here to talk about that, but I can't help but think how related it is, because it's like these comments we're getting the reality here.
Mm-hmm.
We're getting truth here.
Mm-hmm.
And we continue discussions like this in the framework of CST all the time. And it's something we can rely on and go to, that it blesses people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Whether you're comfortable with that term or not, it brings joy into your life. It brings connection into your life. And that's how I would describe blessing in my dictionary.
Mm-hmm.
But so back to this question of what advice would you give her, Zena? I'm looking for it again. How can you be clear if you're not clear?
Yeah. I'm right there right now. I just, I don't know if you were watching at the beginning of the stream, but for me, going through a values list and figuring out my top 5 values, provided a really strong foundation for really all of the choices I'm making in my life and figuring out what's important.
Mm-hmm.
And that's based on career, family, all of the realms, but also, and I guess I'm just working into getting more clear about how I want to express myself creatively, because I get stuck so often in too many options. And so that's kind of my assignment for myself this week, I think. Mm-hmm. I don't know.
Well, the other thing I think as you're speaking is that it would not be accurate to think that this is something that's solved.
Yeah.
It takes time for the trust does not just establish overnight. Nothing worth having happens that fast. And so maybe clarity falls into that same category. It's not something that happens fast. As a matter of fact, in the Tao Te Ching, it says, do you have the patience to allow the mud to settle so that the water is clear? Mm-hmm. And that's that basic idea, is that the mud is everything. And if we can sit with it, even just for 5 minutes a day, maybe we sit with it for 5 minutes a day and think about one thing that's important, or we think about one thing like, what is the least important thing to you right now?
And then, is it negotiable or not negotiable?
And just work through it just little baby steps at a time. It also says in the Tao, which is commonly rephrased, but a long journey begins with a single step. And if we never do anything about it, then the mud stays whipped up and the path never unfolds. And that's partly fear-based. And so another way to go about it might be, in addition to your value list, might be to sit and think, what am I really afraid of most? Yeah. Because I think the mud in the time of the pandemic is fear. A lot of us are clogged up with fear for lots of really good reasons. And if we can't let all that fear settle, then we're never going to get a very clear idea about what could happen next, or what we would like to see happen next. And then Pam has an exercise. Let's look at this. If you don't feel clear, imagine the colors of that unclearness and use paint, fabric, crayons, or whatever. Put it on paper and then name it and set it aside. Own it in an effort to find clarity. That's a good idea.
I love that.
I do too. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mary says, when I taught, I came up with experiential lessons and most often didn't ask permission. When someone came upon my stuff, I acted like I didn't need to ask permission because I didn't want to be shut down. The learning opportunity was rich, so as long as it was safe, I went for it. So courageous is true. Yeah, and honest introspection, and Jeanette agrees it's a process. And Anne says, that's good. When your values are clear, decisions are easier. Mm-hmm. So great comments. Good question. What am I afraid of most?
Yeah, I want to go.
Yeah.
Just start journaling and making right now.
Yeah, me too. Maybe we'll have that discussion tomorrow before the birthday party.
Yeah.
That'd be the biggest gift you could give me.
Mm-hmm.
So, okay, well, you think of anything you want to add? It's kind of a free range discussion.
I'm enjoying doing this with you.
Yeah.
And so thank all of you for being here.
Me too. Me too. Thanks for sticking with us for almost the full hour.
Mm-hmm.
And as always, you can write to me and Zena, and we'll answer. And we hope you'll be back with us next week, because next week we will talk about community as it relates to curiosity, and how it relates to clarity, and how it relates to creativity. And every time we talk about this, I just get even more fired up about how valid and important it is to be here. So,
yeah.
And one thing I did get this week, which maybe I'll end with this. I had a lovely email, and she talked about last week, you might remember, I told about a chair that was taken off the wall as part of an art installation, and my dismay. She said, I also find this is true for me in my creative accomplishments with family and friends, and also in the business world, where I'm a senior worker, and although my work is specialized with a unique set of skills, I am the invisible drone at the back of the office, called to solve one crisis after another, and creativity exists in that world also. So what I wonder is, if a tree falls in the forest and there's no one to hear, does it really make a sound? If creativity exists in isolation with no recognition, is it valid? I struggle with this, and thank you for your dialogues with your daughter. And so what I think bottom line clarity is? It's for us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
She's clear about the role she plays in her job. She may not like it, and I can't blame her, because being recognized is always easier than not being recognized. But we're not trees falling in the forest unheard and unnecessarily so. We are doing this for our own development and our own soul's sake as much as anything else. And when we don't have a community and we are part of a tribe that's judgmental in the way that she implied in what she wrote to me, then we deserve to look for, and we should be encouraged to look for, a tribe that's a loving, supportive tribe, because we know they're out there.
Mm-hmm.
We have one, and we know there are others. We'd love for you to be part of ours, but if you're not, and you have another tribe, that's great, because all we really need is to have that connection and that community somewhere. So we'll talk about that again next week, but in the meantime, never think you're a tree falling silently in the forest, because you're not. Everything you do makes a little bit of a difference somewhere, and that's the thing we need to hang on to, don't you think?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, great. Well, I swore I wasn't going to cry this time around, but so be it. So be it. Happy Valentine's Day. Spread a little love. We love you. Bye.